The Galactic High Council Chamber was the most powerful room in the known universe, where leaders of the greatest civilizations gathered to decide the fate of entire star systems. Each species had a seat at the Grand Assembly, a symbol of their influence and standing in the galaxy. Some seats belonged to warlike empires, others to ancient scholars, and a few to rising merchant coalitions. But in the vast circular hall, among the thousands of occupied thrones, there was always one that remained empty. It was an unspoken rule, a truth no one dared to challenge. The seat was reserved for Earth, and Earth never came. For centuries, new species would join the council and ask the same question: why is that seat empty? The answer was always vague. Some claimed humans had vanished before the council was formed. Others whispered that Earth had rejected its place, leaving only a chilling mourning behind. But no one had proof. No records explained it, no official statements confirmed it, and no one ever attempted to claim the seat. Even the most ambitious empires, those who conquered entire star clusters, refused to touch it. The fear was too great. Velric, a young historian from the Jorvac species, had spent years studying lost galactic history, fascinated by forgotten wars and extinct civilizations. But no mystery intrigued him more than the seat of Earth. He had read every available record, searched every archive, yet he found nothing concrete about humanity's fate. It was as if someone had erased them from history, leaving behind only the seat as a silent reminder. His curiosity became an obsession, and finally, he decided to do what no one had done before. He would find the truth. Using his access to the historical vaults of the council, Velric searched for ancient records, hoping to find any mention of Earth before the council's formation. He spent endless nights scanning old star charts, cross-referencing forgotten documents, and decoding lost languages. But every time he got close, he found gaps in the data, records that should exist, but didn't, entire centuries missing without explanation. It was deliberate. Someone had wiped the truth from history. One evening, deep within the restricted archives, he stumbled upon something strange. A locked data file labeled only with a single word: Omega. It was ancient, far older than the council itself. The system refused access, denying him entry with a security clearance far beyond his level. But Velric was not ready to give up. Using a decryption key stolen from an old administrator's account, he bypassed the lock. The file opened. His hands trembled as he read the first line: Earth's seat must never be filled. The moment it is taken, the galaxy will burn. A chill ran down his spine. The document was thousands of years old, yet the warning sounded immediate, as if it was still being enforced. But why? What had Earth done to deserve such fear? He scrolled further, finding an old record from a long-extinct species. The words made his skin crawl. We begged them to join us. We offered them power, but they simply walked away. And before they left, they spoke only one sentence: "You do not want us here." We did not understand, but we do now. Velric's breathing became unsteady. Humanity had been offered a place in the council before it even existed, and they refused. Why? Every species fought for power, for influence, for recognition. But Earth had turned its back on the galaxy. The thought alone was unsettling, but something was still missing. He needed to know more. Determined, Velric accessed an older star map, searching for the last recorded coordinates of Earth's home system. The location was still there, marked as forbidden space. The records claimed the system was barren, that Earth had been lost to time. But Velric did not believe that. Someone had hidden the truth, and if no one else would find it, he would. As he prepared to leave the archives, the room's security alarms blared to life. Red warning lights flashed across the walls, and the system locked down around him. He had been caught. A cold voice echoed through the chamber speakers. Access to restricted information is a violation of council law. Remain where you are. Velric's heart pounded. He had uncovered something the council did not want anyone to see. But it was too late to stop now. He had to escape. And more importantly, he had to reach Earth before it was too late. Because deep in his mind, an uneasy realization settled in. Maybe the reason humanity never took its seat was because the galaxy was never meant to survive them. Velric ran. His heart pounded as the alarms blared through the archive chamber, their shrill sound echoing off the cold metal walls. He had uncovered something forbidden. Something the Council had buried so deeply that even whispers of it had been erased from history. But now he knew. Earth had never been lost. Earth had walked away. And the galaxy was terrified of what that meant. Security drones whirred to life, their mechanical arms unfolding as they scanned the room. Red lights flickered across their lenses, locking onto his form. Velric ducked behind a towering data terminal as a streak of plasma shot past him, the air sizzling from the heat. He had seconds to escape before he was captured, or worse. His mind raced. He had to get out of the archives. The Council would not let him leave with this knowledge. They would erase his memory or silence him forever. He tapped into his wrist console, overriding the emergency lock on a back exit. The door hissed open, revealing a narrow service tunnel. Without hesitation, he sprinted inside, sealing the door behind him just as another plasma blast scorched the floor where he had been standing. The tunnel was dimly lit, its metal walls humming with energy as he ran. His breaths came in sharp gasps, his body fueled by pure adrenaline. He needed to get to his ship. He needed to leave the station now. The coordinates for Earth's last recorded location were burned into his mind. If he could just escape, he could find the truth. But the Council wasn't going to let him. As he neared the docking bay, his console crackled to life with a transmission. It was an open broadcast across the station. Velric of Jorvax, you are under arrest for accessing classified information. Surrender immediately. The voice was cold, emotionless, a direct order from the Council's security force. Velric didn't stop. He burst into the docking bay, scanning the hangar for his ship. Dozens of vessels lined the platform, belonging to traders, diplomats, and mercenaries. His own ship, a small but fast research vessel, was near the edge of the bay. Just a few more steps. A sudden force slammed into his chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. His vision blurred as he gasped for air. A towering figure in heavy armor stood over him, its visor glowing with unreadable symbols. A Council enforcer. You should not have searched for Earth, the enforcer said, voice distorted by the helmet's modulator. You have seen too much. Velric gritted his teeth. His hands tightened into fists. If I've seen too much, then why hide it? What is the Council so afraid of? The enforcer was silent. That told him everything. Summoning every ounce of strength, Velric lunged forward. He was no warrior, but he had one advantage. The element of desperation. He struck at the enforcer's visor, momentarily throwing them off balance. Then, before they could recover, he grabbed his wrist console and sent a command to his ship's autopilot. The engines roared to life. The docking clamps released. The ship began to lift off. Velric didn't hesitate. He rolled away from the enforcer, sprinting toward the vessel as the landing ramp lowered. Plasma fire erupted behind him, but he didn't look back. He leaped onto the ramp just as the ship cleared the docking bay. The artificial gravity of the station fell away as he tumbled inside. The ramp ceiling shut behind him. He made it. Gasping for breath, Velric scrambled to the controls. His ship's AI flickered to life, recognizing the emergency escape protocol. The thrusters engaged, and within seconds, the ship shot into open space. The station's defense turrets locked onto him, but he was already gone, vanishing into the void before they could fire. The silence of space surrounded him. He leaned back against the control panel, heart still racing. He had done it. He had escaped. But his journey had only just begun. Velric pulled up the star chart, entering the coordinates he had found in the restricted archives. The map shifted, displaying a distant, uncharted sector of the galaxy, a sector labeled Forbidden Space. At its center was a system with no name, no records, no traffic, and yet a seat in the Galactic High Council still belonged to it. Velric stared at the screen, his mind swirling with questions. What had humanity done to make the galaxy fear them so much? And more importantly, what would he find when he reached Earth? Velric's ship hurtled through the emptiness of space, its engines burning hot as it raced toward the uncharted sector. The silence of space surrounded him, but his mind was anything but quiet. The revelations from the archive haunted him. Humanity had never lost its place among the stars. The galaxy had chosen to forget them. But why? He leaned forward, staring at the navigation console as the ship's AI counted down the minutes until arrival. The sector he was heading toward was completely blacked out on all known star maps. No patrols, no colonies, no trade routes. It was as if the entire region had been erased from existence. Velric swallowed hard. He had spent his life uncovering hidden truths, but this was different. The Council had buried Earth's history so deeply that even its name had become a whisper of a rumor. What could be so terrifying about a single planet that the entire galaxy agreed to pretend it never existed? He tapped his fingers against the console, his nerves itching. He wasn't alone in wanting answers. If he had found the forbidden records, then others might have too. If the Council was willing to send an enforcer after him, what else were they willing to do? As if in response to his thoughts, his ship's sensors beeped. A signal. Velric frowned, pulling up the readings. It wasn't coming from his destination. It was coming from behind him. The display showed a single vessel, rapidly approaching. He magnified the view, and his stomach twisted. A Council warship. His hands flew over the controls. They had followed him. Of course they had. The moment he had escaped the station, they must have tracked his jump. But how had they caught up so fast? His ship's AI chimed in. Incoming hail. Secure channel. Velric hesitated, then accepted the transmission. The screen flickered, and a familiar armored figure appeared. The same enforcer who had nearly captured him in the station. You are trespassing in restricted space, the enforcer said, their voice distorted by the helmet's modulator. Power down your ship. Surrender now. Velric exhaled sharply. So this is how it is. You'd rather kill me than let me see the truth. The enforcer tilted their head slightly. You don't understand what you are searching for. Turn back, Velric. This is your last warning. Velric's jaw tightened. He looked at the dark sector ahead of him, then back at the warship on his display. He had a choice. Run and live in ignorance, or push forward and risk everything. He made his choice. He cut the transmission and slammed the thrusters forward. His ship jolted as it accelerated, diving toward the unknown. The warship reacted instantly. A burst of energy flared from its hull, a gravity snare. Velric's ship lurched as invisible forces gripped it, dragging it backward. Warnings flared across his console. He gritted his teeth. The warship was trying to pull him in, but they weren't expecting him to fight back. He reached for the emergency protocols. His ship wasn't built for combat, but it was fast. He rerouted all power to the engines, pushing them to their absolute limit. The ship groaned under the strain. The gravity snare held firm. Velric's fingers danced across the controls. If he couldn't escape their pull, he would make them let go. He shut down his main thrusters entirely. For a split second, the warship adjusted, pulling even harder to compensate. That was its mistake. Velric activated his auxiliary boosters, small thrusters positioned along the sides of his ship, normally used for maneuvering in tight spaces. He fired them all at once, spinning his vessel violently in a direction the warship hadn't accounted for. The gravity snare faltered, and that was all he needed. His main engines roared back to life, and in the next heartbeat, he was free. The warship fired, but it was too late. Velric's ship rocketed forward, crossing the invisible threshold into forbidden space. The moment he did, his sensors flickered, then went completely dark. No signals, no communications, No trace of the warship behind him. It was as if he had vanished from existence. Velric gripped the controls, his breath shallow. This wasn't just an empty sector. This was something else, something unnatural. And somewhere, hidden in the dark, was Earth. Velric's ship drifted in the vast, empty void. No stars, no signals, no sound. The moment he had crossed the threshold into the forbidden sector, the universe itself seemed to disappear. His ship's instruments flickered wildly, unable to detect anything beyond the thick, unexplainable darkness that surrounded him. He clenched his jaw, staring at the console. This wasn't normal. A complete lack of signals was impossible, even in the emptiest regions of space. Background radiation, rogue signals, or distant celestial bodies should have registered on his scanners. But here, nothing. The only thing that still functioned was the dim glow of his ship's internal lights, casting long shadows across the cockpit. He took a deep breath and checked his coordinates. If the archive records were right, Earth should be ahead. He pushed the thrusters forward, but something was wrong. Despite moving at full speed, he felt no motion, no sense of acceleration, as if he were trapped in an infinite, unmoving void. A chill crawled up his spine. This wasn't just a hidden sector. This place had been sealed away. He forced himself to think logically. The Council had erased Earth from history, removed its name from records, and even altered star maps to hide its location. But how had they done this? A blockade? No, there were no ships. A massive energy field. Perhaps, but what kind of technology could suppress an entire region of space? He had too many questions and no answers. His fingers tightened around the controls. There was only one way to find out. He adjusted course and engaged the ship's deep space scanner. A low hum filled the cockpit as the system pulsed outward, sending waves of energy through the darkness in search of anything. Seconds passed. Then, a response. His console lit up with faint readings. The signals were weak, but they were there. Structures, technology, a planetary body. Velric's heart pounded. He adjusted course and followed the readings. His ship accelerated, cutting through the void, and then the darkness shattered. A blinding light engulfed his vision as the ship burst through an unseen barrier. His instruments flared back to life, detecting a massive celestial body ahead. And then he saw it. A planet. It floated in the endless void, suspended in the abyss like a silent guardian. Its surface was dark, covered in deep shadows, with only a few flickers of artificial light visible from orbit. No transmissions, no signs of life. But Velric knew what he was looking at. Earth. He exhaled sharply, his mind racing. He had made it. He had found the lost world. But why was it abandoned? He studied the readings. The atmosphere was intact. No signs of catastrophic damage. No evidence of war. The planet wasn't destroyed. And yet, it was silent. He activated the ship's external cameras, zooming in on the surface. What he saw made his breath hitch. Cities. Massive, towering structures, perfectly intact. Streets, buildings, monuments, all untouched by time. But they were empty. No movement. No people. No ships. It was as if Earth's entire population had simply vanished. His fingers trembled over the controls. He had risked everything to get here. And now he was staring at a world that should have been filled with life, but wasn't. Velric swallowed hard. There was only one way to learn the truth. He had to land. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, setting a course for one of the larger cities. The descent was smooth, too smooth. There were no automated defenses, no warning signals, no traffic control hails, as if the planet didn't care that he was here. His ship touched down in the middle of a vast metropolis. The landing gear hissed as it made contact with a road made of pristine, untouched metal. Velric hesitated. Every instinct told him to be careful. Slowly, he unstrapped himself and made his way to the airlock. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and the silence of Earth greeted him. No wind, no sounds, just the weight of emptiness. He took a cautious step forward. And then, a shadow moved. His breath caught in his throat. He turned sharply, scanning the empty cityscape. Nothing. Velric narrowed his eyes. He wasn't alone. Something was here. And whatever it was, it had been waiting. Velric stood frozen at the entrance of his ship, his eyes scanning the empty city. The structures around him stretched high into the sky, their smooth metallic surfaces reflecting the dim light from Earth's atmosphere. The streets were vast and eerily clean, too clean, as if no one had ever walked them. His fingers hovered over his holstered plasma pistol. He wasn't afraid of ghosts, but this kind of silence. This was the silence of something unnatural. He stepped forward, his boots making the first sound to touch Earth's surface in what felt like an eternity. The air was breathable, but it carried an odd stillness, as if the planet itself had stopped breathing. Velric moved cautiously, his every step echoing in the emptiness. The city's architecture was unlike anything in the galaxy, elegant, advanced, yet eerily abandoned. Towers rose into the sky, suspended bridges stretched between buildings, and massive walkways hovered above him. But none of it made sense. Earth had been erased from history. If humanity had been wiped out, there should have been signs. Ruin, destruction, decay. But this place was untouched. He reached the center of a wide plaza, his hand tightening on his weapon. Something was wrong here. And then, a whisper. Velric spun, his pulse pounding. He saw nothing but shadows shifting between the towering structures. He wasn't alone. His instincts screamed at him, but he forced himself to remain still, observing. His helmet visor adjusted to detect movement, scanning every angle of the city around him. The whisper hadn't been in his ears. It had been inside his mind. He tapped a button on his wrist console, activating a deep-frequency scanner. A soft pulse radiated outward, bouncing off the buildings, searching for anything. The results came back instantly. There was something beneath the city. Velric's stomach tightened. The structures above ground were empty, but the scanner detected massive subterranean networks below. Vast complexes, deep tunnels, hidden chambers. Whatever had happened to Earth, the answer was buried underground. He moved toward the nearest building, searching for an entrance. The door, despite looking ancient, slid open effortlessly at his approach, as if it had been waiting for someone. Inside, the lights flickered to life, illuminating a pristine hallway. The walls pulsed faintly, not with electricity, but with something else. Energy. A presence. He wasn't sure. He advanced cautiously, his weapon drawn. The hallway led downward, spiraling deep beneath the surface. The further he went, the more he felt it. A presence watching him. Then he saw them. Rows of pods. Hundreds. No, thousands, lining the walls of a massive underground chamber. His heart pounded. Inside the pods, humans. Not dead. Not decayed. Alive. Suspended in a frozen, preserved state, their faces peaceful, as if merely sleeping. Velric swallowed hard. This wasn't a tomb. It was a vault. A hidden refuge, untouched by time. Humanity hadn't been destroyed. They had hidden themselves away. But why? What had forced them into this eternal sleep? Velric reached out, placing his hand on the glass of the nearest pod. The moment his fingers touched it, a voice echoed through his mind. You were not meant to find us. His breath caught in his throat. The air around him shifted. The pods, they were waking up. And Velric realized, too late. Something else had woken up with them. Velric stumbled back as the whisper echoed through his mind. His breathing quickened, his pulse a rapid drumbeat against his ribs. The pods, they were waking up. The dim glow inside each chamber pulsed, slow at first, then faster, spreading like wildfire through the underground vault. The silence was no longer empty. A low hum vibrated through the floor, through the walls, through his bones. The air itself seemed charged, as if the entire chamber had just taken a deep breath. The humans inside the pods didn't move yet, but Velric could see their eyelids fluttering, their chests rising and falling. They were alive, but something else had woken up too. Velric turned sharply, scanning the massive underground complex. He wasn't alone anymore. In the far corner of the chamber, shadows shifted unnaturally. A shape emerged, tall, humanoid, but wrong. Its form flickered like a glitch in reality, distorting with every movement. The whisper returned, louder, sharper. "You were not meant to find us." Velric raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the creature blurred forward. Instinct took over. He dived aside, rolling behind a console just as the spot where he had stood exploded into a wave of crackling energy. His mind reeled. What was that? He peeked over the edge, his breath catching in his throat. The thing, it wasn't alone. More figures materialized from the shadows, their distorted forms shifting like broken reflections in water. Guardians. Velric had read ancient galactic myths about them, beings designed to protect something powerful. No one believed they were real. Until now. And they were standing between him and the truth. The pods were waking faster now. The humans inside stirred, their fingers twitching, their breathing deepening. The hum in the air turned into a low, resonating pulse. The entire chamber was coming to life, as if the planet itself had been waiting for this moment. Velric didn't have time to think. He raised his plasma rifle and fired at the closest guardian. The shot passed straight through its distorted form, as if hitting nothing but air. The guardian didn't even flinch. Instead, it turned its faceless head toward him, and the whisper became a deafening roar inside his mind. "Leave." Velric's vision blurred, his knees buckled, and for a moment, the world around him vanished. He was no longer in the chamber, no longer on Earth. He saw flashes, a great war, flames consuming the sky, alien ships darkening the stars, a battle so catastrophic that the galaxy itself trembled, and in the center of it all, humanity. Not as weak victims, not as conquered people, but as the architects of something terrifying. Velric gasped as reality slammed back into place. He staggered, gripping the console for support. The guardians still stood, unmoving, their forms rippling like heat waves. And then, a voice, different from the whispers, a voice that didn't come from the guardians. "Stand down." The command echoed through the chamber, cutting through the hum, through the energy in the air. The guardians froze. Velric turned toward the source. A single pod, larger than the rest, had fully opened. Steam hissed from its edges as a figure stepped out, muscles coiled, eyes sharp with intelligence. He was human, and he was awake. The man's gaze met Velric's. He didn't speak at first, only studied him, as if weighing something deep in his mind. Then finally, "You weren't supposed to find us," the man said, his voice steady, unreadable. Velric swallowed hard. Too late. The man exhaled, shaking his head. "Then I hope you're ready for the truth." Behind him, the rest of humanity began to wake. We erased our presence. We scattered the records. We made sure history would remember us as a failed experiment, as a species that burned too brightly and destroyed itself. We made the galaxy believe that Earth was just another lost world, another tragedy of war. Velric shook his head. But why stay hidden forever? Why not come back? The man looked at him, and for the first time, Velric saw something in his eyes that unsettled him more than anything else. Regret. "Because we knew what would happen if we did," the man said softly. A deep, resonating hum filled the air. The pods had finished waking. The last humans were awake. And the guardians, those strange, shifting figures, began to move again, not to attack, not to defend, but to obey. Velric realized the terrifying truth too late. We didn't wake up because we wanted to. The human said, "We woke up because something forced us to, and if we're back." His gaze hardened, and the chamber seemed to shrink around them. "It means the galaxy is already on the path we feared." Velric's blood ran cold. Outside the underground vault, sirens blared. Ships moved in orbit. The galaxy was watching. The galaxy was waiting. And humanity had just returned.